Good afternoon, everyone. Call to order this public hearing, October 3rd, 2024. Today's public hearing is convened under the provisions of the Local Government Act of British Columbia to hear submissions relative to the proposed bylaw. All persons who believe that their interest in property is affected by the proposed bylaw shall be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard respecting matters in the proposed bylaw. I would ask any members of the public who wish to speak to commence your address to this board by clearly stating your name. The board will not debate the matters of a proposed bylaw with individual citizens, but members may ask questions of you following your presentation. The main function of this public hearing is to listen to your views. No one will be or should feel discouraged or prevented from making their views heard. So this is first hearing for bylaw number 2765, which would rezone a portion of 1238 Ford Road in Blackpool from MH1 Manufactured Home Park to RVP1 Recreational Vehicle Park 1 to enable the development of a new 16-space recreational vehicle park. Mr. Corporate Officer, are there any written submissions?
Thank you, Chair. There were no written submissions for this hearing.
Thank you very much. Are there any in-person submissions? No, I will call a second time for any in-person representations. And I will call a third and final time for any in-person.
Chair, I believe there is a member of the public on the Zoom call who wishes to participate.
All right. If there is someone on Zoom who would like to participate, please state your name and address.
Hello. My name is Donna Louie, and I am the applicant. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for Donna Louie? No. So for third and final time, any further representations from members of the public? All right, there being no further speakers, I declare this public hearing closed. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Thompson-Nicola Regional District for Thursday, October 3rd, 2024. The TNRD acknowledges that we connect with many First Nations communities across our vast regional district, and today we are located on the Tecumlip-Secwepemc territory, situated within the unceded ancestral lands of the Secwepemc Nation. The TNRD appreciates the partnership that we have with Tecumlip-Secwepemc and respects the territory and land on which we gather today. September 30th was the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, and we would like to honor and recognize the day and the important place that it holds in recognizing the injustices that Indigenous peoples face. The TNRD is committed to advancing reconciliation within our organization, and this can be seen in the board's willingness to complete Indigenous cultural awareness training and in protocol agreements we continue to sign with local Indigenous communities. We respect the survivors of residential schools and take time to recognize them, as well as the children who never came home. King's Coronation Awards. So congratulations to Vice Chair Robin Smith, to Director Doug Houghton, and to former directors Al Rain, Stephen Quinn, and Bill Kershaw, all of whom were awarded the King Charles III Coronation Medal last month. MLAs were able to award these medals to people who have made significant contributions to BC or a particular region or community. Are Directors Houghton and Vice Chair Smith sufficiently red in the face yet? Well deserved. More than 500 individuals in BC were recognized with this award, and we are proud to see this award go to so many directors, past and present, who have made positive impacts in our TNRD communities. So once again, congratulations to Vice Chair Smith, Director Houghton, and former directors Rain, Quinn, and Kershaw. So I was very proud, understatement, to stand alongside many of you, most of you, to receive an award granted to the TNRD at the Union of BC Municipalities Convention 2 weeks ago. The photographer said this was officially the largest group he had ever photographed. We were very pleased that the TNRD was the recipient of the Excellence in Governance Award for communication materials that were created during the 2024 budget process to help residents understand the costs of services and taxation. It was clear that this project helped to make our complex TNRD budgets easier for the public to understand. These materials have really helped streamline conversations that TNRD staff and board members have with the public about exactly what it is that the TNRD does in each area and how much people pay for those services. Hardly any two communities in any regional district are alike, as there are so many local services that only certain properties and areas pay into. I'm told that staff are already well underway to create the same budget communication materials this year, and that it will actually be a much easier process now that they've built the framework. There are more than 200 local governments in BC that are eligible for UBCM awards each year, and there are only 4 categories, and we received the top prize in one of those. All the other top award winners were large urban centers, so we should be very proud. And I know that CAO Hildebrand is very proud, and he would like to say a few words.
Thank you, Chair Roden. We're very excited about this, and I appreciate you allowing me to just say a few things on behalf of our staff team. Things have significantly changed in the TNRD in the way we do business over the last 5 years. I want to acknowledge our senior management team and the entire staff, especially Carla, Austin, Colton, and Mike, for their efforts in pulling these tremendous tools, these taxation visuals together. It really allows our residents to understand the complexity, as you mentioned, of taxation in the regional district and how it personally impacts them. Transparency, accountability, and sharing factual and accurate information was the key to developing these tools. And we look forward to continuing to strive for excellence in governance and are very proud and appreciate being recognized. So thank you.
Thank you very much. That is on display in the foyer, attractive with actual moss growing out of the top for those who didn't get a chance to see it in Vancouver. Our TNRD fire departments hit a big milestone in September, and that was surpassing 200 firefighters in total across the 9 fire departments that are owned and operated by the TNRD. Many rural areas are seeing challenges in recruiting and retaining non-career firefighters, and we are very fortunate that we have seen some very, very good community interest and high membership within our departments. It speaks to the positive culture within our fire departments and to the great leadership and community-minded individuals who serve on all of these fire departments. We want to give a very special thank you to our firefighters across the TNRD who provide an invaluable and a selfless service in order to protect the lives and properties of their friends and neighbors. Being a firefighter in a rural fire department is rewarding and builds camaraderie within the community, and we appreciate everyone who has and who continues to serve as a firefighter in the rural TNRD communities. Library update. So all TNRD board members are invited to join staff and the public to a For the Love of the Library's 50th anniversary event. Dr. James Turk, intellectual freedom expert and director of the Center for Free Expression at Toronto Metropolitan University, and Lesra Martin, Canadian lawyer and motivational speaker, will both share their insights on the freedoms that we often take for granted and that shape our ability to learn, grow, and connect as a community. It will leave you feeling empowered and ready to make a difference. And the event will be held in Kamloops at the Paramount Theatre on Wednesday morning, October 16th, beginning at 9:30 a.m. All libraries within the TNRL will be closed that day, and further information is available in your blue folders. Just an update, I'd like to remind the board that now that the writ has dropped and we are in the middle of the 43rd provincial election, MLAs who were ministers are no longer ministers. It's a caretaker government. They are not even MLAs anymore. They are simply people who are running for election or re-election as candidates. So we have technically no Minister of Health, no Minister of Emergency Management and Climate Readiness at the moment. So just something to bear in mind. Committee appointments, it's that time again. Now that we're back in the full swing of fall, I'd like to remind you all that we are approaching our halfway mark as board members. Yay. And reaching full term for our committee memberships, which have been switched to 2-year terms. So we will be providing you with more information on new committee memberships at our meeting in November, but we'd like to remind you to start thinking now about what committees you might like to serve on, both external and internal. When they come up in November, the committee appointments will be announced in January. Upcoming meetings and events. Well, in addition to the library event that I just talked about on October 16th, we also have a finance committee meeting that day. On October 17th, an electoral area directors meeting, and later that day, regular board meeting. Also on Thursday, October 17th, TNRD flu clinic. Get your flu shots, 1 floor down. Cultural protocol gifts workshop for city councillors. On Wednesday, November 6th at 1 p.m., we have budget workshop day 1. On Thursday, November 7th at 8:30 a.m., we have budget workshop day 2. And on Thursday, November 7th, we have our inaugural board meeting. In your blue folders, you'll find your regular mail and my semi-regular announcement that in the event of an emergency, if the fire alarm sounds, leave by the safest and closest exit doors, either at the rear of the room to the left or to the main entrance on that side of the room. Go down the staircase, exit the building, assemble in the staff car parking lot at the rear of the Paramount Theatre. Do not run or use the elevators. If you have mobility problems and think that you might need assistance in the event of an emergency exit, please tell the General Manager of Legislative and Corporate Services who will assist you. And that is Mr. Lois at the back there, who is helpfully waving his hand in the air. And that is the end of the chair's announcements. So moving right along, are there any additions to deletions from the agenda? All right, we have none apparently. So we have the regular board meeting minutes from the meeting of September 5th, 2024.
Move adoption.
Vice Chair Smith, thank you very much. Director Newstader, are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? Online members, we have Director Getz and Director Blackwell. Okay, thank you. Remember, we have to hear you.
Yo.
We heard you, thank you. All right. We have bylaws from public hearing, zoning amendment application number BA 200 and zoning amendment bylaw 2765/2024 and temporary use permit TUP 72. We do have a few recommendations. Director Ranta, thank you. Seconded by Director Thorpe. All right, any discussion on recommendation 1, that the zoning amendment bylaw be read a 3rd time? On the question, all those in favor?
Aye. Aye as well.
Anyone opposed? That is carried. We have a second recommendation.
Move to. Second.
Director Middleton, Vice Chair Smith, thank you. Any discussion? All, Director Sow? No, just stretching. Discussion question, go ahead.
Just thank you, Chair. Just from the report, stated, please note staff previously requested the agent have the legal additions to the second RV on MH space number 9 removed prior to the future review of TUP. Based on recent visits, has been working to have the structure removed. Is there any more updates since then? Or is there a time frame or deadline? Thank you.
Through the chair, the majority of the cleanup has been done. There's still a few minor things, but we didn't feel it was necessary to hold back the TUP today. Yep.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments on this? On the question, all those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Anyone opposed? That is carried. We have 8.1 zoning amendment bylaw number 2856, properties on Lakeshore Road, Nesconlith Lake, BC. We have 3 recommendations in order. Director Ranta, Vice Chair Smith seconds. Any comments or questions on recommendation 1, that the bylaw be introduced and read a 1st and 2nd time? All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed? Carried. Second recommendation. Director Smith, thank you. Seconded by Director Morris. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Aye as well.
Anyone opposed? That is carried. And number 3.
Second.
Director Middleton, seconded by Vice Chair Smith. Discussion? No hands in the air. All those in question, all those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye, aye. No one opposed? That is carried. Item 9.1, referral response number REF 742, unsurveyed Crown land in electoral area E. This is for information only. Does anyone have any questions or comments? If this is developed or goes ahead, there will be a presumably very fulsome report coming to the board. No questions or comments? All right, we move on to item 10.1, Kamloops to Secwepemc Thompson-Nicola Regional District Protocol Agreement. We do have a recommendation. Moved, who said that? Sorry, Director Bass, seconded by Director Thorpe. Thank you. Any discussion of the protocol agreement? No. All right, on the question then, all those in favor?
Aye. Aye as well.
Is anyone opposed? Thank you, that's carried. 10.1.2, Building Inspection Services Budget. We have a staff recommendation. Director O'Reilly, seconded by Director Newstater. Discussion. Director Grenier.
Thank you, Chair. I was reading this report and I think the recommendation is just dealing with 2024. How's that? Is that good? Okay. When I read the report, the recommendation seems to talk about 2024, although the report does speak to application of surpluses going out to 2028. But I think that all we're dealing with in this recommendation is just essentially the shortfall that is projected for 2024. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. So the request is just for the remainder or for this year. The budget table on the 3rd page shows the projected use of the reserve from 2025 to 2028, which is in the approved 5-year budget. So that's what we would have, or what has been approved to be used over those years to draw down the reserve. What we're asking for is for this year to use additional reserve to cover the shortfall. So it only applies to this year.
So supplemental to that explanation, we have in this year a deficit instead of a surplus. We've had surpluses in the last 3 years, and we are in a down year and we have a deficit. This use of reserves in future years isn't projecting a structural deficit for the next 5 years in your department. It's just sort of some kind of an allocation to reduce taxpayers' costs of the department, I would guess, because otherwise you're saying we're going to have a $250,000 loss in 2028, and I don't think anybody's in a position to do that. So
through the chair, yes, no, that's exactly it. We're not projecting a loss in those years. We're showing how even if we break even in those years, that we're wanting to draw down the reserve. I think that was some discussion last year as well about not sitting on this large reserve, but showing how we can incrementally work away at that to keep taxes at a reasonable level. And yes, those numbers can fluctuate and will be adjusted year by year depending on the revenue each year.
thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No one online? I'll call the question then. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Anyone opposed? That is carried. 10.1.3, Sabinal Transfer Station lease renewal. Director Ranta, thank you very much. Second by Director Grenier. Any discussion on this? No? All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed? That is carried. 10.1.4 Vavenby Transfer Station Lease Renewal.
Move the recommendation.
Vice Chair Smith, thank you. Director Hayward seconds that. Discussion. Director Newstater.
I can't find my button. Thanks. This is just a curiosity. Was it timed on purpose so that they would coincide? Is that something that was intentionally done? Really just a curiosity as we look at the 30-year plan.
Through the chair, no, was not intentional. I think it just had to do with when these transfer stations were created and the leases were initially entered into and they expire at the same time.
Any other discussion, questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed? That is carried. Item 10.1.5, Next Generation 911 TELUS Agreement. We have a recommendation. Director Newstater moves that and seconded by Director Thorpe. Thank you. Discussion, questions, comments, feedback? No? All right, so very straightforward. Last chance, Mr. Vieira is sitting there waiting. All right, on the question then, all those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Is anyone opposed? That is carried. 10.1.6 BC Hydro Public EV Fast Charging Stations Initiative. We do have a recommendation. Director Blackwell, you'd like to move this?
Sure, and I have a question afterwards.
All right, and Director Hayward is seconding this. And discussion. Director Blackwell, I gather you have a question.
Yeah, I must have missed it, but this is the first time I've heard of this at this report time. Question to staff, maybe they know, is this expandable beyond the number of charging stations that are there? Because we have the Sportsplex next door, which would be very easy to plumb into the same set of equipment and network.
Through the chair. Oh, sorry. Is that okay? Through the chair. Thank you for your question, Director Blackwell. That's something we could absolutely explore. BC Hydro has been really interested in working with us, and certainly staff at the District of Clearwater have expressed willingness to help with road easements, all kinds of opportunities there. So we could absolutely explore that.
And thank you. Yeah, and I think the location is quite excellent. Kitty corner to Tim Hortons, the medical center, the library, the sportsplex, the shopping center, and lots of opportunities to dine and take in, Clearwater Info Centers across the street pretty much as well. So good work on this location. Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Sal?
Thank you, Chair. And I echo Director Blackwell's comments about what a great project this will be for the area as an electric driver myself. But just maybe more of a suggestion to staff, maybe not necessarily the regional library, for electoral areas, perhaps we can do something similar as the regional district library the staff has done. For example, Vavenby Community Hall properties, we can perhaps maybe have a bit of advocacy with BC Hydro, because these are fantastic. As Director Blackwell said, these are great opportunities for economic development in electoral areas. For example, Vavenby, since Area A, there's a general store with a park, and coming into alignment with the future parks and trail strategy, perhaps that would, at the beginning of trailheads and such, yeah, just food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Director Onslow.
Thank you for that. I would like to echo what Yusuf has just said as well, and be curious if consideration in the future would be given to the smaller communities such as Blue River, which is in the middle of a void, essentially. So 120 kilometers from Clearwater, 90 kilometers from Valemount, it would be appropriate to look into these small towns as options.
Thank you. CEO Hildebrand, did you want to address that point?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and to the directors. I believe it was BC Hydro that seeked us out on these specific ones, but to Director Sau's comment and Director Onslow, we can certainly follow up with them and find out what other opportunities there are within our regional district, and maybe provide some mapping that would show some of the properties we own that might make sense for them to place EV chargers. So we can certainly take that away. But in this situation, it was Hydro, they came after us, and we said absolutely it made sense at our libraries, but it would make sense at a lot of locations.
Thank you. Director Middleton.
Thank you. Just a question, and this would sort of be a little bit more operational than would say an opportunity is with the EVs being on TNRD properties, and if we look where these are located and some of our challenges in wintertime for things like snow removal and access, do we incur sort of any liability or extra costs to ensure that these are, say, accessible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even when our library isn't open? And now are we going to have the onus on us to have snow plowing done in a more timely fashion? Just thinking is do we have to provide any kind of guarantees about access to these units, particularly in the wintertime?
Thank you for your question, Director Middleton. We absolutely wondered the same thing. So I've been in contact with our manager of facilities, Ian Dalgleish, and our snow clearing contract already has time requirements in that, and those would meet BC Hydro's requirements as well. So there would be no additional costs for the TNRD to include or add these EV stations to the lots. In addition, BC Hydro would improve any lighting or anything like that they saw fit as well, because everyone wants the safe property and you know, a safe user experience as well. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Oops. It was neither a question nor a comment. All right. In the absence of any other hands, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Thank you. That is carried. 10.1.7 UBCM Asset Management Grant Approval. We have a recommendation. Thank you, Vice Chair Smith. You took the words right out of my mouth. Anyone second that? Director Newstater, thank you. Discussion, questions, comments? No. All those in favor then?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. That is carried. 10.1.8. We have a number of recommendations regarding amendments to policies. Who was that? Sorry, Director Bass. Thank you. Number 1, seconded by Director Hayward. Discussion on recommendation number 1 regarding the Policy and Governance Committee, the policy number 5.1.2 bursaries. No. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Carried. Director Bass, seconded by Director Thorpe. Thank you. Any discussion on recommendation 2? Director Onslow?
Hi there. I just have a question about section where it's 5.1.4, that no organization will receive grants exceeding 5,000 per year. If oftentimes in these tiny communities, it's one organization that does everything for the community, as in our case. So I'm curious if this $5,000 were put in place, and the community association were to ask for 8,000, how would they go about getting the funding to do everything that happens in the town?
Through the chair, thank you for your question. The $5,000, it unfortunately is a hard cap. But as always with these, if there is a requirement for something that doesn't fall within the policy, it's possible to either make a special election, or we could, if the board would like us to look into amending that to increase that limit, or potentially add like an exception or something that allows for more than $5,000. Typically, the electoral area grant aid funding has been kept to a smaller amount just because there's usually the idea is usually for smaller to multiple different groups in the area, but in a situation like that where there is only one group in the area, it may make more sense to change that.
Okay, so that would be on a one-off situation?
Yes.
Perfect.
CEO Hildebrand.
Sorry, if I might add as well that this is also a board policy that we're following. So if the policy needs to be adjusted, that would have to come back to our policy and governance group, and we could potentially change it, or go use a one-off scenario like we're suggesting. So
thank you. Does anyone else have any questions about recommendation 2? On the question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Anyone opposed? That is carried. Recommendation 3. Director Bass? Vice Chair Smith? Thank you very much. Anyone have any comments about policy 5.1.5? No. Director Grenier?
Just, thank you. We had a conversation at UBCM about third-party funds and the 5-year planning. And I'm just wondering if it would make sense to ask staff to come up with a rather straightforward 5-year plan that we can give to third-party groups to say, here's what we'd like you to follow, something that we have already pre-approved, so that when we're considering funding or providing funding to the third parties, there's an expectation that's straightforward with the 5-year plan that we've talked about at the UBCM meeting.
CEO Hildebrand.
Thank you to you, Chair Roden. I know that we had a good conversation with UBCM there, and I'm in conversations with staff after UBCM. We felt it might make sense to bring that discussion back to start with the electoral area director committee to make sure that we're aligned with what we heard and what the expectation is, and then bring that back to the larger board to ensure that we have full alignment with the board on how we want to move forward with that. So that would be my suggestion. As long as that answers your question, that's what we would plan on doing, I believe, in the next 2 weeks for the next meeting.
Thank you. Any other questions? Director Laird.
Just a question on the asset management plan. When we had that meeting, they basically informed that it can be quite a simple 5-year management plan. Is it possible to ask UBCM to supply a 5 asset management plan that they would accept when we send them down, instead of, they must have some sort of framework that they are looking for, especially when it's only like smaller funding coming from our community improvement fund, and they all require an asset management plan if we're using our community improvement fund.
So you're looking for a template, a fairly simple template that could be used by a nonprofit or a local organization?
Making the application.
So see if UBCM has something like that they could send. We should be able to do that.
Yeah, through Chair Roden to the director, I think we can also have that discussion. We can try to do some of that research prior to our meeting in 2 weeks. I know in discussions with them, it still needs to be infrastructure based. So as long as it meets their criteria, maybe they can give us a better understanding of what they expect to receive from a reporting standpoint.
Any other questions or comments? On the question then, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? That is carried. We move on to 10.1.9, regional grants and sponsorship, and we're going to split it into two. The first is recommendation 1, and then the second one will be about what to do with the unallocated $7,000. Thank you, Director Middleton, Director O'Reilly. All right, discussion on the first recommendation. Director Grenier and Director Graham.
Are we breaking these approvals down 1 through 5, or are we?
We're taking 1 through 5 as one recommendation, and then we are taking as the second recommendation what to do with the leftover $7,000.
Are we able to break down 1 through 5? Is that something that
we would have to have an explanation as to why you chose to do that?
Well,
and it would have to be within the parameters of the metrics and guidelines of the application form, which was approved by us and which was vetted by staff. And you would have to explain what grounds you would be wanting to separate them out for.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Graham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to oppose all 5 of these grants being dealt with at the same time. And I have my reasons for one of them should be separated because I would like to speak against it. Thank you.
Okay, and same thing I said to Director Grenier, we would have to know strictly within the parameters of the guidelines for regional grants in aid. We would have to know under those guidelines why you would be wanting one of them to be pulled out. So you could make that motion. We could see if it gets a seconder.
I'd like to make the motion, take number 5 out, deal with it separately.
Director Newstater?
Just point of order, because we have a motion on the floor that's been first and seconded, I guess, for Ledge Services, wouldn't that have to fail before we could go back and revisit severing?
So at this point, the, through the chair, the motion has been moved and seconded. At this point, Director Graham is moving an amendment to that motion. So we're in the process of discussing the motion. If the amendment is seconded, then the amendment would need to be voted on, and that could change the main motion being discussed.
All right, so Director Graham, you're making that amendment. Does that amendment have a seconder? Director Grenier? All right, discussion on the amendment. And Director Graham, could you please explain to us why you want number 5 removed? Within the parameters of the guidelines and metrics that we as a board have agreed on, and which the staff who vetted the grants in aid have followed, according to the report that's attached.
Could you help me with the guidelines?
No, I can't because you have to tell me. You're the one who made the amendment, so.
What the guidelines are?
No, you need to explain why you want that pulled. We can't simply go ahead and take it out without an explanation from you.
Okay.
And it has to be within the report that is attached to this. So what is it about that particular application as laid out in the report that you are objecting to?
I do not believe that number 5 deserves the grant. Now, I don't know what guidelines you're talking about. I'm sorry if I step over.
The guidelines in the report showing the metrics, the scales, the rubric that's used to measure each application. Okay. So it shows that, and according to the guidelines which we as a board voted on, any application which scores above 50% is accepted. And I believe without looking that one scored at 57%. So it does meet the criteria and guidelines that we as a board have voted on.
Fair enough. So I would like my comments or the fact that I oppose this one in record in the minutes. Because
all right, so we do have your amendment on the floor. We do need to vote, so we could take a vote on that. And if it is not the will of the directors to go ahead, then that would be defeated. But then you would have the option of voting against when it comes, or you could withdraw the amendment. So those are the 2 options that we're looking at right here. Mr. Lois, am I correct here?
Thank you, Chair. We are required to record in the minutes all votes that are taken. So at the moment, with the amendment on the floor, if that is voted on, then the names of all those voting will be entered into the names of all those who vote contrary to the majority will be entered into the record. And then regardless of the fate of the amendment, when you return to the main motion, that we will also be entering into the record the names of all those who vote contrary to the majority.
Oops, thank you. Let's turn that on.
Okay, let's withdraw it and we'll wait till the vote is done. That's when I will do it.
So you're going to
Withdraw the motion.
withdraw the amendment.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And Director Grenier, you seconded it. You're good with that? Okay. So we are back to the original motion, which was a recommendation that the board approve a total of $18,000 to the 5 qualified applicants of the regional grants and sponsorship requests. Does anyone else have any questions or comments on this? No hands up online. All right, on the question then, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I think everyone, if you could just please keep your hands raised so that we can record all those in favor. Thank you. Have we recorded everyone or do you still need more time?
Chair, the requirement is that we record the names of all those who vote against the motion.
Against? All right.
I think the show of hands indicates that we'll be recording the people who are about to raise their hand.
All right.
It's clearly
So,
majority.
okay, so all those opposed, please raise your hand. So if you are opposed, please leave your hand up in the air for a moment so that it can be recorded. Okay, we good? Thank you very much. And now we have the second point. We do have $7,000 that was unallocated and staff have thoughtfully provided us with 2 options. Would someone like to move one of those 2 options? Director Morris. I can see you now. This is wonderful.
Thank you. My motion would be to go forward with the unallocated 7,000 into the next intake.
So option number 2, transfer
Correct.
it to the spring 2025 intake. Does that have a seconder? Director Bass, thank you. And staff, I understand from the report that the spring intake is traditionally more, there's more take up on that than the fall one.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Director Newstader.
Just for discussion, I'm curious whether maybe we need to evaluate our goals with this funding because it is tremendously unusual to be undersubscribed for funding like this. There is an abundance of need out there. So I guess when I look at this and I see that we're undersubscribed plus the number of applicants that we had to reject because they weren't able to meet the terms of agreement, or however we frame that at that table, I'm concerned that maybe we need to adjust either our goals, which to me would be get the dollars out the door. We've identified these dollars to make sure we do community good. They're not doing what they're supposed to do, or perhaps adjust some of those terms to make sure that we're meeting them, because it does concern me to see that we're undersubscribed, and that's not really what we're aiming for here. So curious whether staff would like to discuss that at all. An adjustment, I probably would have opted for option 1. I'm okay with option 2, but it's sort of self-defeating if we're not actually making sure that we get the applicants and that they're well educated about the targets that they need to meet.
Through the chair, thank you for your question. So we were actually having a discussion about why it might have been undersubscribed during this intake period. And a really great point that was brought up by our grants writer Ainsley is that there's actually a 4-month period between the last intake and this one, and then a quite larger 8-month period between the next intake. So I think part of it is that shorter intake period doesn't really provide a lot of time between. And then the other component to it too is that the timing of this one is right during when a lot of the non-for-profits have their volunteer staff are not working and they're in the middle of stuff that they were already planning from the last intake, and they have kind of like this this lull that happens during the summer session or the summer season when people are away and taking vacation and the volunteers aren't around and they're maybe not starting new projects. So we were going to discuss with the board potentially making this next intake a couple of months later, either starting in October, maybe October 15th. And we think that would actually increase the uptake, because the last intake that we actually had a really, really large number of people that didn't get approved just because we had so many applications, and most of the groups that applied and were approved didn't get the full amount that they asked for just because there wasn't enough money to go around. So we do think that pushing it out a little bit and that delay would probably help a lot with the uptake.
Thank you. Director Newstader?
So I would move that the board approves the moving of the timelines as recommended to staff to meet the core objectives. And then I do have one more supplemental question, if I can get a seconder on that.
Do have a motion on the floor, don't we? So we can't, so that would be a separate motion to bring.
Apologies.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, it's okay. It's okay. But no, I think in Ashcroft, what we do is we have two, and we do have them 6 months apart, March 31st and September 30th. Because in spring, obviously, that's when there's a lot of stuff going on in the summertime, but September 30th, with back to school, with volunteer groups getting their ducks in a row, I think having that 6 month gap. And also, I know that staff do work with applicants whose applications do not meet the threshold for whatever reason. So I know, just for the benefit of everyone, that staff are very happy to work with groups that apply and for whatever reason do not qualify, so that then we can help them succeed next time around by making some tweaks and just showing them how they can improve their applications for future. Does anyone else have any questions? Director Sal.
Thank you, Chair. This question originally I would have thought might have more bearing on the first previous recommendation, but I think this involves this one as well. In the metrics of community involvement impact, in the line of thinking of, how do we help the applicants build a case? Can I get more background on community impacts and how negative impacts could be or are they taken into consideration? Or is it just positive impacts? Thank you.
Through the chair, thank you for your question. So when we're looking at the overall community impact, a really big part of the regional grant program is the number of areas within the TNRD that are impacted. So we mostly are looking at the positives, and we take the application has an opportunity for the applicant to kind of let us know how many regions they're impacting, both electoral regions and the municipalities, and then to give us a description of how they're impacting those regions, and then kind of go into how many people they're impacting and how they're impacting those groups. And so that's kind of the basis that we score on.
Supplemental, thank you. So not necessarily you wouldn't go out into the community and or the track record of any prior bylaws, complaints and stuff that wouldn't have any bearings on this metric?
Through the chair, no, that is not something that we're looking into. We are taking the application that we receive. We check a couple external things like their filed financial statements, and we look at their charity status. And as long as those other external sources that we look at are all good and everything looks okay, we base our application scoring solely on the application.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? No one online. All right, on the question then, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye as well.
Anyone opposed? That is carried. All right, and Director Newstader, it's your time to shine.
I don't know about that, but I'll remove that motion that we adjust the timelines as per staff recommendation.
Moved by Director Newstader, seconded by Director Smith. Any discussion on this? And so the timelines, is everyone happy with those timelines of March 31st and September 30th? Does that work, or should it maybe be February 28th/29th and August 31st? I'm doing math in my head.
I like March and September. I think those are
okay. All right, so March 31st and September 30th it is. Okay. Any other questions or comments? On the question, then all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That is carried. 10.1.10 Community Emergency Preparedness Fund Volunteer and Composite Fire Departments Equipment and Training Grant. Director Thorpe moves that. Who'd like to second it? All right, Director Lepso, thank you. No, not Director. I'm sorry. Oh my goodness. Director Karpak, I do know who you are. You haven't been here the full 2 years. That's my excuse. All right, so we do have the recommendation moved and seconded. Does anyone have any questions or comments? No, on the question then, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? That is carried. 10.1.11 TNRD building permit activity highlights for information. Does anyone have any questions or comments? All right, we do have for information, Parks and Trails Standing Committee minutes, Policy and Governance Committee minutes, and Electoral Area Directors Committee minutes. Does anyone have any questions or comments about any items contained therein? No. All right, we have 2 items for information only. Does anyone have any questions or comments about those? We have new business. Does anyone have any new business to bring up? Director Grenier, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. At UBCM, there was a number of agencies, BC Assessment Canada Post, and in speaking to Canada Post in particular, they informed me that they take their directions on the municipality or the naming of the municipality from the regional district or I guess the municipality, depends on who you're asking. So in the regional district, we have Cherry Creek, we have Tranquil Valley, we have Alpine Valley. Those are names that we're familiar with, but for Canada Post, it says Kamloops, or it says Savinaw, or in some cases, Darfield. And so I said, well, that doesn't really help people find their civic address, and it doesn't help people that are trying to deliver products to people in Cherry Creek when they're looking for a street address in Kamloops that doesn't exist. That then became a bigger issue since the call of the election, where Elections BC is actually telling people who live in the Caribou-Chilcotin north of Kamloops Lake, the new adjusted riding, that they're going to be voting for the person that lives in the candidates in Kamloops Center, because the mailbox that they pick up their mail from says Kamloops. And so we've pointed that out to Elections BC that that's a problem, and they were quite surprised by that. The other thing that quite surprised, my address, my personal home residence is a Kamloops. Of course, I live in Cherry Creek. Elections BC says I'm going to be voting for the Kamloops Center area, even though they could have found me on the map. Again, all directions from the regional district or the municipality. So they said, particularly Canada Post, they said that if they had instructions from, in our case, the regional district that said, this is an area called Cherry Creek, or this is an area called Tranquil Valley, or this is an area called Red Lake. Those are 3 areas in my area J alone that have this confusion, that they would then set about and set up their operations. And I think that a lot of this discussion we had before about BC assessment, and we're finding that if we start in our own area, regional district, and give directions out to these people, that they'll follow that. So I raised that because it was quite surprising, and it's something that I think we have the ability to fix up. And I'm going to raise it in the electoral area meeting, but I thought that everybody would be interested to hear that that we might be able to clear up some of this confusion. I have a second as well.
Okay, thank you very much. CEO Hildebrand.
Thank you, Chair Roden. To Director Grenier, I'm not sure if you had seen my email on Sunday night. Yeah, so I did send an email to Director Grenier explaining our process and how we can actually solve all those problems by communicating with our GIS team. So we can certainly send that out to the entire board, but we do have a solution to that, and it gets easily fixed. And I know our GIS team would be very happy to do that.
Thank you, Director Grenier.
Oh, second thing, we just talked about an undersubscribed situation, and we had a meeting with Connected Communities at UBCM, and interestingly, they Connected Communities said that they had a fund. I believe it was $75 or $90 million that they expected to be fully subscribed for cell towers by both TELUS and Rogers, and they got zero applications for that kind of funding. What's interesting, as the conversation carried on, I asked the question, would they entertain an application by a regional district to install cell towers under that fund if we could access that capital to build those cell towers? And I used the example, say if we could identify 5 areas that are underserviced that could use cellular service, would they entertain that? And they had said that cell towers cost about $1.5 million to $2 million each. Yes, they would entertain that. So again, I'm going to be raising in the electoral area meeting that we consider some kind of an initiative. I realize that it's use of staff's time, but I think that we have a number of constituents that would very much appreciate if we could expand or advance their cellular connectivity. The Connected Community folks seem to think that that's something that they're open to, and it might be a useful initiative by our regional district.
Thank you very much. Anyone else have any new business? No. And I do not believe we have any notices of motion, but I have been wrong before in my life. So once or twice. Rarely, I wish. Any notices of motion today? No. And we move on to question period. Do we have any questions from members of the public? Either in person or from Zoom land? No. All right. Well, we do have need of a closed meeting, so I would move that the meeting be closed to press and public under Community Charter Section 91G, litigation or potential litigation affecting the regional district.
With the recommendation.
Moved by Director O'Reilly, seconded by Director Sarai. All those in favor? Anyone?
Aye.
Oh, that's one. We'll take it as read. That's 2. That is moved. All right, we are going to close, so we will adjourn for a couple of minutes while we get everything set up.